So today we will study effective range theory. We have been using this term in proton scattering, right? So today we will discuss what is effective range theory. Did you get my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Effective range theory. So today we will see what is effective range and what is the importance of effective range. Actually, we have, when we derived, scattering cross section for neutron proton scattering, we have used a very simple assumption that potential is, it is square well potential. But actually, we had used square well potential, right? And that's why that theory was very simple to derive. But actually nuclear forces not always, follows square well potential. So, the exact potential is very close to, Gaussian potential. So if we had used Gaussian potential, then the nuclear cross section in case of neutron proton scattering, as well as in case of proton proton scattering, would have been very difficult. It was, luckily we got almost the same results using this square well potential, but exactly the potential is not square well. It is close to Gaussian, close to Yukawa kind of potential. So in that, if we are going to use this exact potential, then it would be very difficult to, uh, relate the cross section with phase shift. So this result is for, for square well potential. Square well potential. What if we had used, other kind of potential, this formula would have been very difficult to derive, and it was very difficult to derive relation between cross section and phase shift. Excuse me. Okay. So what is the importance of effective range theory? According to effective range theory, we can derive relation between cross section and phase shift. We can make the relation of cross section and phase shift independent of potential. Whatever that potential you use, this potential is not going to affect the relation between, cross section and phase shift. Otherwise the calculation of phase shift would have been very difficult. So this is the brilliant theory which was developed by Blatt and Jackson, right, using Schrodinger wave equation. So did you get it? What is the importance of effective range theory? I'm repeating that due to effective range theory, we can find a relation between cross section and phase shift, which is independent of potential, right? So whatever the potential is there between two nucleons, with what force they interact, it is not going to affect the relation between, cross section and phase shift, because these two terms are very important terms in finding the properties of nuclear force. So how to find effective range, that is coming in this article, right? So what Blatt and Jackson did, they took two wave functions, wave function u1 and wave function u2. And what kind of these wave functions are? We are considering these wave functions at two different energies of neutrons. Suppose in one experiment, neutrons are bombarding on proton with energy E1, and in another experiment, they are bombarding on proton with energy E2. So they are interacting with proton at two different energies. And see if the energies are different, if this energy, suppose this energy E2 is higher than energy E1, then, proton is not going to affect neutrons as much. They are going to affect with energy, E1, because slower the particle, more the effect of, the target force on that particle. As you can perform an experiment, like very simple experiment. You just place a magnet on floor and you just roll a iron ball towards magnet. So if the velocity iron ball is very high, then that magnet is not going to deflect. But slower the velocity, right, and that magnet is going to attract that iron ball, right? So this is the idea. So what is the effective range? Effective range means we have to find the range at which neutron starts deflecting, right? Suppose uh, if neutron is here, then because nuclear force is short range force, it is not going to affect this neutron at this point. But if that neutron comes close to proton, at certain distance, it will start applying force on this neutron, right? So we have to find a range such that the particle doesn't have any velocity. This neutron has zero velocity and the proton is going to affect it. Otherwise, the range, this nuclear force range here, it depends upon the energy of the particle. Higher the energy, and lower will be the range of the target particle, range of the nuclear force of target particle. So ਜਿੰਨੀ velocity ਘੱਟ ਹੋਏਗੀ particle ਦੀ, ਉਨੀ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦੂਰ ਤੋਂ target ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਉਹਨੂੰ affect ਕਰੇਗਾ incident particle ਨੂੰ, right? So, but what is effective range? If we have to find a range that if neutron had been, neutron had been stationary, then what would be the range on that neutron according to proton would be? For example, in the same experiment, that simple experiment, you have to find at what distance that magnet start attracting the iron ball. If the iron ball is stationary, you can perform various experiments. You can roll that iron ball at high speed, then at low speed, and then even lower speed, and then placing the iron ball just close to magnet without applying any force to the iron ball. So what is the range of magnet when that ball is stationary? So this is the idea of effective range. What is the range of nuclear force when this neutron is stationary? It is not moving. So what is the range of nuclear force between neutron and proton at that point? So this is what we have to find. So we are going to start with two wave function, u1 and u2, and how they are different. The only difference between these two wave function is that in one case neutrons are moving with energy E1, and in second case they are moving with energy 2. There is no other difference because potential would be same in both cases because target is same. So potential is not going to affect. The only difference is the energy because we are going to do these experiments at different energies. So there will be two because we are using two different energies providing to the neutron, right? So this equation can be written in this form. I have done nothing here, just change d square into 2 bars, which again shows that it is double derivative. Nothing else I have done here. So, and this wave function will become u2 double dash plus m h cross square, and then E2 energy of the neutron, and V is the potential, and U2, it is the wave function of this neutron. See, here we have not defined what the shape of potential is. We have used general potential. We are not going to explain what the kind of potential is here, because in the end of the article, we will get rid of this potential. Whatever the form of potential is, we have nothing to do with it. We are going to eliminate from these equations, right? So, and in next step, what we did, multiply equation 1 with U2 and equation 2 with U1. So multiply equation 1 with U2 and equation 2 with U1. So what we, and having this subtraction. So multiply equation 1 with U2, we will get, U2, U1 double derivative plus M2H cross square E1 minus V, and because U1 is already here and we have multiplied this equation with U2, so we get the wave function, equation 1 by multiplying by U2 and equation 2 multiplied by, U1. So we have multiplied here with U1 and after that we have taken subtraction, right? So this can be simplified to this equation, right? Why so? Because this term, see this term minus V into U1 into U2 is here, and because minus sign is here, so this term will become, from this term we will get V U1 into U2, and here we get minus V U1 U2. So these two terms are going to cancel because it is minus V U1 U2. This is plus V1 V U1 U2. So canceling these terms, we have simplified this equation to U2 double derivative of U1 minus U1 double derivative of U2 plus M H cross square E1 minus E2, because here it is E1 and minus sign E2 here, because the second term, this term is going to cancel with the second term of this bracket, right? Is it clear so far? Are you getting it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this can be rearranged. See, look at this term. This is kind of, if first term, derivative of second term, and minus, first term, and sorry, second term derivative of second, right? So we can take the derivative common, right? And we can write this part as this part. So if you solve, that is, this will become U1 double dash, right? And into U2, because we are going to take derivative. So this term is just equal to this term. So we have rearranged in this form. And second, this part we have written as such here, right? In equation number 3.
So
Okay.
derivative with respect to R?
With respect to R, yes. With respect to R. All these derivatives are with respect to R. See, we have started from here. See, this is double derivative of U1 with respect to R. Clear? And what is double dash? It is nothing. U1 is nothing. U1 dash is nothing. It is curly du1 over dr, and u1 double dash is nothing. It is again derivative of, du over dr. So we have replaced that. So we have started with derivative r. So therefore, if double dash is derivative with respect to r, then we will take dr as the derivative term, right? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Did you get it? Okay. Okay, see, now we know that we can write K1 as M E1 over H cross square and square root, and K2 is equal to M E2 H cross square root. So we have been doing in so many articles earlier. We have seen this in neutron case. We have seen this in neutron proton scattering, and then in proton scattering. So this is nothing new. So we have just changed this term K1 and K2 in terms of energy, right? So rearranging from this relation, we get E1 is equal to K1 square H cross square over M, and E2 K square K2 square H cross square over M, right? So we are going to replace these values of energies in equation 3 with these in terms of K. So we will get equation this, right? So there's nothing new in this equation. We have just replaced E1 in terms of K1 and E2 in terms of K2, right? So again, you can see in in this term, what we have done, we have, we have got H cross square here and H cross square here. They are going to cancel, and then this M is going to cancel, right? So we will get this term, right? And then we have taken this term on right hand side, because here it is k1 square minus k2 square u1 u2, and on the other side, that is taking it on the right hand side, it will become minus, so that's why it will become k2 square minus k1 square, right? So now let us integrate this equation. Let us integrate this equation with respect to r. See, this is derivative. So if we integrate this equation with respect to r, then we will get this term, because integration is the reverse of derivatives. So we already have derivative. So if we take its integration, we will get integration as u1 dash u2 minus u2 dash u1, right? And integration limit is from 0 to infinity, right? So on the other side, because K2 and K1 are constant, because energies are constant, so we will take this term outside the integration on right hand side, and therefore the integration will be over 0 to infinity of u1 u2, right? Now in next part, let us take another two wave functions, v1 and v2, right? What these functions are, what is the sort of these wave functions are, what is the function u1 look like? We, in case of neutron, we have seen that inside the nuclear range, wave function behave as sine wave, right? And when the wave function, when the particles are out of the nuclear range, then they decrease exponential. This is what we have derived in case of neutron. So since the case is same, there is interaction of neutron and proton. We are studying this effective range theory for the case of neutron and proton scattering. And neutron and proton, is very much identical to neutron. Therefore, the wave function will be same for this NP system as that of neutron. So this is the case for this is wave function. This complete wave function is u1, and u2 will have the same form. U2 will have the same form, but the shape will be either large or small as compared to u1, because we are taking this case at energy e1 and this at e2. So since wave function depends upon energy of the particles, so form will be same. Even this will be a sine wave, and it will be exponential outside the range, but maybe the amplitude of this wave function is different from this one, because amplitude depends upon energies, right? Depends upon energy. So shape will be same of the wave functions, both of the wave functions, u1 and u2, but their amplitudes will be different. So these are the wave functions u1 and u2. We are going to take new wave functions just for the sake of simplicity. And what their wave function behave like, they are outside the nuclear range, they are same as u1, but here they extend as such to r is equal to 0. Means this is a wave function where potential is not going to affect this wave function, right? Suppose this is the nuclear range, and if there is a particle which is not going to be affected by potential, and the wave function of that particle will be like this. You know, sine wave is just because of the potential, because the particles, when the particle interact, they make sine wave. But if they are, these particles are not going to interact, then wave function is not going to affect inside the nuclear range. So even in the inside the nuclear range, if the particles do not act any force on each other, then wave function outside and inside the range will have the same form, right? So this is wave function V1, and similarly we consider a wave function V2, right, which is not being affected by potential. So this is wave function V2. So if we combine these two graphs, we will get this kind of shape for V1. This will be V1, and this function will be U1, right? So this is the difference. Similarly, uh, V2 will be, you know, matching with V2 will be matching with U2 outside the range, but inside the nuclear range, it will extend as such, because this wave function we have considered in a way that it is not going to affect by the potential, right? So here it is R is equal to 0. This is R is equal to B inside the nuclear range. Okay, did you get it so far? Have, is
Sir,
this
V1
point clear?
वाला
What
दोबारा
V1 and hmm? Okay, but you see,
V2 वाला दोबारा
ਕੁਝ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਬੇਟੇ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਕਰੋ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡਿੰਗ ਕੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ।
सर U
What
वाला
did
तो
you
समझ में आ
understand
गया
from
कि उसका वेव फंक्शन जो है हम U1 U2 में
you?
एनर्जी का डिफरेंस आएगा और जो साइन वेव और एक्सपोनेंशियली वो
Okay,
डिक्रीज करेगा जब
let
आपने
me explain it.
एक्सटेंड किया
Let me
उसके बाद
explain it. Okay. Let me explain. Let me explain with it experiments. See, this is proton, and this is neutron. Neutron, you can say, right? And it is, you know, toward proton, and suppose this is the nuclear range. I mean, this proton is going to apply force on neutron when neutron come at this point, because nuclear force has short range. So at this point, neutron is not getting any force from proton, so it will keep on moving in straight line because there is no force, right? When it approaches at this distance, now this distance is about from center of proton or center of nucleus, it is about R is equal to V. So since it has come inside the range of nuclear force, therefore it will start experiencing some force and it will start deflecting like this, right? Clear? Now, if we outside the range, you know, outside the range, the wave function is just exponential. Outside that, this is what we have seen in case of neutron, because neutron is not much different from this case, because neutron is also a function of neutron and proton. And in neutron and proton apply force on each other. And here the case is similar, because in this case, neutron is bombarded on proton, and neutron and proton are going to interact. So the wave function is much similar to, you know, neutron. So if we form wave function to this experiment, which we have derived in the case of neutron, it is it is the wave function of this kind. Inside the nuclear range, if we apply wave function to this path, the wave function we have seen that it is sine wave. And outside the range, when again this neutron goes away from the nuclear range, this wave function, you know, is exponential. This is what we have derived in the case of neutron. Do you remember this?
yes
Do you
sir
remember this? Inside the nuclear range, wave function is sine wave, and outside it is, you know, exponential. Okay, so this is the case for when neutron and proton are going to interact. Now have we have just for convention derived another wave function. So this is wave function u1, suppose, right? And now we want to derive wave function v2. So what is v1? Sorry, what is v1? Suppose here it is proton, and its nuclear range is, you know, B, and here is some particle. Suppose it is not neutron. Suppose it is some other particle which doesn't experience any nuclear force, right? So outside the nuclear range, obviously this particle is not going to, you know, affect by the proton. Even when it comes inside the nuclear range, it will not affect by, you know, proton. Why? Because this particle doesn't have any effect due to, you know, due to nuclear force. For example, in the case of, you know, two charges, suppose this is charge plus one, and here some negative charge is coming toward this positive charge, it is going to deflect, you know. But suppose there is no charge, this is neutral particle, then whether this particle come in the range of this positive charge or not, it will keep on in moving in straight path because this is neutral particle in this case. Similarly, in this case, a proton has nuclear force, but this particle, suppose, doesn't affect its path due to nuclear force. Suppose this is electron. Now see, electron doesn't experience any nuclear force. So if you, uh, I cannot take electron because it will apply Coulomb force because we are talking about proton. Suppose this is, you know, suppose this is gamma ray. We can consider it gamma ray. Now if you bombard gamma ray, and gamma ray, because neither it can experience any Coulomb force nor any nuclear force, so even in inside the nuclear range it will keep on moving in straight line, right? So what would be the wave function of gamma ray then? Because outside the range and inside the range the wave function will not change. So if outside the range it is exponential, if inside the range will also, it will be, you know, exponential. So it is not going to bend. This bend is just because this sine wave is just because of the nuclear force. But in this case, because they are not going to apply any nuclear force on each other, therefore wave function outside the range and inside the range, they will be similar. But is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
So I think we are left with 10 minutes. So let us see how far we go. So now what we did, we have supposed this kind of two wave functions, V1 and V2, you know, which are, you know, they are similar outside the range, outside the nuclear force range, but inside the nuclear range, they are not going to affect by the potential. Therefore, this V2 will extend to R is equal to 0. S line tak extend ho jayega. So this is V2, this is U1, right? So this is the difference between, sorry, this is V1 and this is U1. So this is the basic difference between U1 and V1, right? Clear? Similarly, there is a difference between U2, this is U2 and V2. Is it clear with it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now see, V1 and V2 are chosen in such a way that they are not affected by the potential. This is what I have explained you, right? We have chosen V1 and V2 such that they are not experiencing any nuclear force. So if they are not experiencing any nuclear force, it means they are not affected by the potential. And the form of these function can be written as V1 and V2 can be written as V1 sine K1R plus delta 1 and V2 B2 sine K2R plus delta naught, right? And V1 and V2 are the normalization constant. And you know, we can choose V1 and V2 the normalization constants as per our convenience. And in this case, we have chosen V1 and V2 in a way that V1 is equal to V2 and both they are equal to 1 at R is equal to 0. So how we have chosen V1 and V2, that the wave function V1 and V2 become 1 when R is equal to 0. So they cut the y-axis, you know, the perpendicular axis at 1, right? when R is equal to 0. So this is how we have chosen V1 and V2. They both are equal to 1. V1 and V2 both are equal to 1 when the distance between the particles, that is neutron and proton, is 0, right? So from above condition, since V1 and V2, they are equal to 1, at R is equal to 0. So putting R is equal to 0 in this equation and V1 is equal to 1, we can solve for V1. So we can find what will be the normalizing constant V1. So V1 is equal to 1 over sine delta 1, where delta 1, you of course, is the phase shift in case when the energy is E1, right? And similarly, B2 is equal to 1 over sine delta 2 in case when energy is E2, right? Okay. So replacing the values of V1 and V2 again in these two equations 5 and 6. So we have done nothing. We first have calculated the value of V1 and V2 as these values and then replace these values in equation 5 and 6. So therefore we get this equation. V1 is equal to 1 over sine delta 1 sine K1 R delta 1, and taking its derivative we get K1 cos, because the derivative of sine is cosine. So K1 cosine K1 R plus delta 1 over sine delta 1. Similarly, we find the value of V2 and V2 dash, right? This is not V2, this is V dash, right? Again, taking second derivative of these derivatives, we are going to take derivative of these two equations once again, and therefore cosines will turn again into sines with negative signs. So we get double derivative of V1 like this, and this term is nothing, it is V1 sine K1 R delta 1 over sine delta 1, it is V1. So we have replaced it with V1, and similarly we get V2 double dash, I mean double derivative of V2 is equal to minus K2 square V2. Any problem so far? Any doubt so far, Vijay? Is it clear?
Yes,
Is
sir.
everything fine? Okay. So now we have got these two equation number 9 and 10. So what we do here, that we multiply equation number 9, we multiply this equation with V2. It is the same case what we have done for U1 and U2. In that case, even we have multiplied the first equation with U2 and second with U2. Here we are going to multiply these equation with V2 and V1. So we multiply with V1. So these are these steps are almost same. So doing this, then again we subtract these terms from each other and we get this relation, right? So subtracting, taking the subtraction of these terms, taking the subtraction of, first term from second term, we get these terms. You can see these steps, right? Okay. So I think we need to continue this article in the next lecture because we are left with 2 minutes. So I'm sparing these 2 minutes for any questions so far, what we have discussed so far.